Imagine this. A wrestler walks into the arena. He's an incredible athlete. His matches are amazing. He works hard. He wins constantly. He says all the right things. WWE is basically telling you this is the guy you're supposed to love. And then, boo! The entire arena turns against him.
Meanwhile, another wrestler walks out. He's arrogant. He cheats. He insults the audience. He breaks the rules. And the crowd goes absolutely insane. We love him. So what happened? Why would thousands of people cheer someone who's supposed to be the villain while booing someone who's supposed to be the hero?
The answer is much more interesting than simply saying wrestling fans are weird, because crowds aren't really choosing between good and evil. They're choosing between people who make them feel something and people who don't. And once you understand the psychology behind it, you'll start seeing it everywhere.
Wrestling has a very simple system. You've got the babyface, the good guy, and you've got the heel, the bad guy. The good guy is supposed to get cheers. The bad guy is supposed to get booed. Simple, right? Not really, because the audience doesn't sign a contract agreeing to follow the script. WWE can write the story. They can choose who gets the championship. They can give someone a massive entrance. They can put their face on posters. They can have commentators constantly tell you this is the future of WWE. But there's one thing WWE can't completely control: your reaction. And when thousands of people gather inside an arena, something fascinating happens.
The audience starts judging the wrestlers for themselves. They don't necessarily ask, who is the good guy? They ask, who do I actually want to watch? And that's where everything starts to change. A technically perfect wrestler can become boring. A villain can become beloved. An underdog can suddenly become the biggest star in the building. And sometimes, the crowd completely hijacks the story. Here's one of the biggest reasons a wrestler can get booed despite doing everything right. They're too perfect. Think about real life. Imagine meeting someone who never makes mistakes. They always look perfect. They always say the perfect thing. They always win. They never get embarrassed. They never struggle. They never show weakness. You might respect them, but would you actually feel connected to them? Maybe not.
Because people aren't perfect, and one reason imperfect characters can feel more relatable is that their struggles look familiar. That's part of why a small mistake can sometimes make a highly competent person seem more human. Psychologists have studied versions of this idea under what's known as the pratfall effect. But here's the important part. It doesn't mean people automatically hate perfect people. It means that under certain circumstances, a small flaw can make a highly capable person feel more human and approachable. And wrestling is basically built for this.
Imagine two wrestlers. One walks into the ring looking completely unstoppable. He wins every match. Nobody can touch him. He never gets embarrassed. He never struggles. Then another wrestler loses, gets beaten up, gets knocked down, gets back up, loses again, but keeps fighting. Who do you think the audience is more likely to emotionally connect with? The perfect machine? Or the person who keeps getting back up? That's the power of the struggle. People don't just want to see someone succeed. They want to feel like that success means something. And when a wrestler seems too protected, too dominant, or too obviously chosen by the company, some fans start feeling like they're being told what to think. And audiences don't always like being told what to think.
Now let's flip the situation. Why does the obnoxious villain sometimes become the most popular person in the arena? Because wrestling fans aren't actually required to hate someone just because the script says he's bad. A heel can insult everyone. He can cheat. He can break the rules. He can walk into the ring and say, "You're all idiots!" And the crowd might respond, "We love you!" Why? Because he's entertaining. He has personality. He makes the audience react. He might have incredible timing. He might deliver hilarious insults. He might have a memorable entrance. He might do something completely unexpected. And suddenly, the crowd doesn't care that he's technically the villain. They just want to see him again. This is one of the most important lessons in professional wrestling. Character alignment doesn't guarantee audience alignment. A wrestler can be a heel on television and a hero to the audience. And sometimes that's actually a sign that the wrestler is doing something very well. Because getting 15,000 people to passionately hate you is difficult. Getting 15,000 people to passionately love you is difficult. But getting 15,000 people to passionately feel anything about you, that's valuable. The worst reaction for a wrestler isn't always boos. Sometimes it's silence. There's another fascinating phenomenon. Sometimes fans aren't cheering the wrestler. They're cheering against the decision being made around the wrestler. Imagine WWE spends months telling you, this is our next huge superstar. They give him victory after victory, big entrances, championship opportunities, constant television time, but the audience doesn't connect with him. Meanwhile, another wrestler is getting pushed aside. Maybe he's less protected. Maybe he's losing constantly. Maybe he's barely getting television time, but the crowd loves him. So what happens? The audience starts supporting the person they believe deserves it more. And suddenly, the wrestler WWE wants you to cheer gets booed. The wrestler WWE isn't focusing on gets the biggest reaction of the night. It's almost like the audience is saying, no, we're choosing. This is one reason live wrestling crowds can be so unpredictable. Because WWE isn't performing in front of a passive audience. It's performing in front of thousands of people who can react however they want. And if the reaction becomes loud enough, WWE has to listen. Now here's where psychology gets even more interesting. Imagine you're sitting in an arena. You're not sure how you feel about a wrestler. Then 5 people near you start chanting, "Let's go!" Then 50 people join, then hundreds, then thousands. Suddenly, you're surrounded by one giant chant. And even if you weren't planning to participate, you might find yourself joining in. Why? Because humans are highly social. We constantly look at the people around us for clues about what's happening. If everyone around you starts cheering, you immediately notice. If everyone suddenly goes silent, you notice that too. And in a wrestling arena, these reactions can spread incredibly quickly. One person starts a chant, 10 people repeat it, a section of the arena picks it up, then the entire building is screaming it. And suddenly, the wrestler who was supposed to be the villain has a catchphrase the entire audience is chanting. This is why a single moment can completely change a wrestler's relationship with the crowd. One incredible promo, one funny line, one shocking moment, one viral clip, one unexpected reaction, and suddenly the audience sees that wrestler differently. The story may have been planned, but the reaction wasn't. Here's something wrestling fans sometimes forget. Being booed doesn't necessarily mean a wrestler is failing. If the audience genuinely hates a villain, that's a success. If everyone is screaming at the television because they can't stand a character, the character is doing its job. The real problem is when the audience doesn't care. Imagine a wrestler walks into the arena. Nobody boos. Nobody cheers. Nobody chants. Nobody talks about him afterward. That's far more dangerous. Because wrestling is about creating an emotional response. Love, hate, excitement, anger, shock, laughter, anything. A wrestler who can make an arena explode with boos may actually have more audience connection than a wrestler who receives polite applause. And that's why some of wrestling's most memorable villains became legends. The audience hated them until they loved them. Or sometimes they hated them because they loved them. And that's what makes wrestling so fascinating. It looks like a simple story about heroes and villains, but underneath the entrance music, costumes, and pyro, it's an experiment in human behavior. We don't always reward the person who is technically the best. We don't always support the person we're told is the hero. We often connect with people who feel authentic, people who struggle, people who surprise us, people who entertain us, people who seem like they're breaking the rules. And sometimes we cheer the villains simply because we don't want someone else deciding who we're supposed to like. Wrestling gives us thousands of people in one building and then asks a very simple question. Who do you choose? And the crowd answers. So the next time you see a wrestler getting booed even though he's supposed to be the hero, or a villain getting the loudest cheers of the night, remember, the audience isn't necessarily confused.
they might be telling you exactly what they think. Because in wrestling, the script can decide who the good guy is, but the crowd decides who they actually care about. And sometimes, the crowd wins.
If you enjoyed this, subscribe to Wrestling Panda for more WWE stories, psychology, and behind-the-scenes explanations. Because the next time you hear an entire arena suddenly change its mind, you'll know there's a reason. Also, tell me which superstar should WWE push more.